Well, welcome back to another episode of the Always About People show. My name is Chris Allen. I'm the host of this show. And here on the AAP show, we cover all topics, all sort of agendas related to people in the workplace, individuals, and how to make them better. Always About People exists to help companies create cultures where people thrive. And I wanted to just take a moment in this episode to cover a topic that I'm seeing in many of the organizations that we are working with. One of the hot topics today is mental wellness, mental health. And today's show is just titled simply Belief Becomes Behavior. Now, we'll dig into that a little bit more, but this is hot on top of my mind because of something that happened to me just last week. But the way that I would love to just kick into this show is that I believe ultimately so much of what we end up acting on, so much of what we behave around, so much of what we do in life is tied intricately to what we believe, either about ourselves, about the world, about other people around us. And that's what we want to just cover for a few moments today. Belief becomes behavior. So it's interesting. I've shared this example before, but in 1954, a British runner named Roger Bannister, who ran the mile, believed that it was possible to run a mile in less than 4 minutes, the sub 4-minute mile. Prior to 1954, doctors actually said it was impossible. Doctors said that there was no way you could run a mile in less than 4 minutes because your lungs did not have the capacity to give you enough oxygen to run that fast. They would say things like your heart will have problems pumping blood to the rest of your body. It's impossible. There was actually a quote that said that your lungs might explode, but Roger Bannister believed differently. Again, belief becomes behavior. In 1954, Roger Bannister ran the first sub 4-minute mile. And that might not be the most interesting part of that story. What's even more interesting to me is that four other individuals ran sub 4-minute miles within the next 12 months. In other words, once somebody believed it was possible and they crossed the threshold, that now changed the belief system in additional people that made it possible for now 5 individuals to run sub 4-minute miles. Since that year, over 1,000 people have run sub 4-minute miles, and a really, really high quality college track athlete will run a sub 4-minute mile. It's actually something that we don't even think anything about anymore because the entire belief system changed. And so what I want to challenge you with for just a moment today, and whether you're watching this live in the moment or you're watching it into the future, what I just want to challenge you with is a question. What are you believing? I believe that sort of in this post-pandemic world that we're living in some of the VUCA environment, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, there's many uncertainties regarding the real estate market, mortgage, housing, the financial markets, a war in Ukraine. Whatever it might be, we're bombarded with these environments that are creating these belief systems in our minds. And so I want to just tell you a story that happened to me last week that has triggered my mind to think about this at a deeper level. And I just want to ask you again, what are you believing? Maybe even as you watch this show, you should keep a notebook in front of you or a phone or something to take some notes. But I would just ask you again, what are you believing? And belief becomes behavior. And when I say behavior, some of what I'm also saying is like, what are some of the thoughts? What are some of the emotions that we're feeling? Because again, we feel something, we can act on it. When we're feeling anxiety, sometimes we're acting on that. When we feel anger, sometimes that comes out, at least for me, in traffic or in the car. But again, what are you believing? And how are those beliefs becoming behaviors? Last week, I was on the road. I was traveling, spent a lot of time in the airports. It happened to be my birthday last Sunday, and I was traveling to a national conference in Las Vegas. I had no issues traveling. I travel a lot. And so I have global entry, which gives me access to kind of the TSA pre-check. And so there's a lot of times that I don't even think about this. I have my routines down. I drive to the hourly parking lot. I park my car. I walk in. I get through security quickly. And I've got the whole thing timed perfectly. And so last week on Sunday, I left the Charlotte airport, headed to Las Vegas, didn't think anything about it. The travel plans worked out, got to Vegas on time, and then flew home Wednesday morning. Again, checked in, no issues, TSA pre-check, go through the security line. And part of why I'm telling you this story is that in each of these airports, there have been a number of flight cancellations. The lines are very long. And even days before your trip comes, even before the 24 hours where they allow you to check in, you might receive an email from your airline that says, hey, we're experiencing delays in our airports. Make sure you arrive early because these lines are longer. Well, we also happen to be during a spring break rush. And so there's a lot of people traveling. But I don't think anything of it because my routines, I stick with them. And so my belief system is, well, it's going to work. It's worked every time before. It will work this time. My flight home on Wednesday was fine. I left early, kind of in Pacific time, got back to the East Coast. And again, didn't think anything of it. This was on a Wednesday, but I had to turn around to travel again on Thursday. And so I checked in 24 hours ahead. I got my boarding pass, little TSA pre-check on the boarding pass. And my oldest son was traveling with me. He's got TSA pre-check. And so I had to make sure that that was all good. Both boarding passes say the same thing so that we can get through these lines quickly. And I have, again, my timing down, arrived at the airport at that perfect timing, parked the car, walked through security. And my son went first, went straight through, handed his driver's license, kind of scanned the boarding pass, which happened to be on my phone. He's all good. He starts walking through. They scan my driver's license, and the guy turns to me and he says, "You're in the wrong line. You're standard." And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not standard. Some of you are probably laughing right now. I'm not standard. My boarding pass says TSA pre-check on it. Look right here. That's why they let me in this line. I'm not standard. I'm global entry. And this individual TSA agent said, "Sir, you're in the wrong line. I don't know what to tell you. You're not pre-check. You're standard." And he showed me on the screen. I said, "Well, can another agent run my driver's license?" So the agent across the little aisle ran my driver's license. He said, "No, you're standard. The line is back there." And he pointed to this massively long line. All of these thoughts started to flood my brain. The whole time I'm thinking, I'm being wronged. This is so wrong. I'm not standard. I'm TSA pre-check. I'm global entry. It says it on my boarding pass. I travel multiple times a week, at least multiple times a month. This has never happened before. And so in my mind, I'm believing you have this all wrong. The individual who was the second to check my driver's license said, "Well, sir, you can go to customer service at your airline and they might be able to help you." Well, I didn't have enough time because, again, I hadn't left enough time to stand in that long, massive line to make it through. And so I didn't have time to wait. And so in the fear of the moment, believing that I'm TSA pre-check and being wronged, I walked out of the pre-check line around to the front of the standard line. At least that's what they called it. And I tried to get the attention of a TSA agent because I didn't have the time to wait in line. I finally got the attention of one of the TSA agents who had said that, "No, you're standard." And I said, "Sir, my son went through the line. I don't have time to wait right now. Can you let me through? I'm happy to go through the standard line. I'll take my shoes off. I'll take my jacket off. I'll unpack my bag. I'll pull the computer out. I'll put it in the bins. I'll stand in the little machine that swirls around me with my hands up above my head, my legs spread. I'll go through the whole thing, but you have to let me through. So they sent a woman over. She looked at my boarding pass. It had pre-check on it. She just allowed me to come through kind of the line. I'm sure there were people behind me that were really frustrated that I got to cut in line, but I believed I was being wronged. I believed that I was TSA pre-check and something was a glitch in the system. So I get through security. I get to the other side of security. I'm still a little bit frustrated. And I try to get on the phone with my airlines because of my status. And I'm talking with this agent and I'm saying, or I guess it was a customer service agent, I'm saying, here's what's gone on. Here's what happened. He's checking my name, making sure my name's spelled correctly, making sure that all the information's in the system. And he comes back and he basically says, Chris, everything's right in our system. There's nothing we can do. And so again, I'm believing that I'm totally wronged. I can't figure this out. And again, finally something clicks. Something clicks in my mind. And I realize that, is it possible that my global entry has expired? And so I get on the plane and I pull up global entry and I'm looking into my profile. The first thing I realize is that I may have used an old email address in my profile. And so if they had ever tried to warn me of my needing to renew, I wouldn't have received that notification. And I quickly realized that because my birthday was the prior Sunday, my global entry and TSA had expired the prior Sunday. And in fact, it wasn't TSA's fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was my fault because I was no longer TSA pre-check. I was in fact standard because I had allowed my global entry to expire. And yet what was interesting in that moment is that I still behaved a different way. I behaved like I was in fact TSA pre-check, like I was in fact global entry because I believed that I was, when in fact I wasn't. I had expired on my birthday. So fast forward a few days, I'm flying back from Chicago to Charlotte, and I'm thinking in my head, this is going to be a problem because I am in fact standard and I'm going to have to wait in lines. Well, I felt like I had left enough time to wait in lines. We get to Chicago O'Hare on early Sunday morning, a week later from my first trip. And I look at the standard line and it's incredibly long. It's incredibly long. And I'm starting to think in my head, we might not catch the flight. This is a problem. Well, again, based upon my status with flying so much, I have a little priority on my boarding pass. And at Chicago O'Hare, they have a priority line. I walked up to the woman and I said, is there any way that myself and my son can get through this line? And she looked at my boarding pass. She said, yes, this is what this line is for. And my son is not priority. She says, oh, now I realize why you asked, but he's TSA pre-check. She was kind enough to let us go through. Well, I'll pause on the story for a second. The end of the story is that we got through security very quickly. I'm sure there are people who are incredibly frustrated with me right now, the fact that I can get through security quickly because these lines are long right now. But let's go away from the story for a second and just cover what I really took away from the last week in my life. And that is, again, belief becomes behavior. If I believe that I am TSA pre-check, if I believe that I'm global entry, I'm going to act as such. In that line at the Charlotte airport, I was frustrated. I was in the wrong, but I was frustrated because I believed that I belonged here. And that caused me, when I was forced to go to the standard line, I didn't go to the end of the line. Because I believed that I belonged, I went to the front of the line and I asked for a favor. I think in many ways, if I hadn't believed that I belonged there, I would have just gone to the end of the line, waited, and probably missed my flight. A few days later, when I was at Chicago O'Hare, I might have stood in the standard line. I might have waited there for a really long time, and I could have actually missed my flight with my son on Sunday morning as well. But because I believed, and because for years I've been in this place of global entry and TSA pre-check, I believed that there was a different way. And so in that moment, I was strategically trying to problem solve, and I found a line that would allow me through. Okay, moral of the story. The whole topic of today, the concept that I wanted to get across was that beliefs really do become behaviors. And in this time of uncertainty, in this time of remote work, in this time of hybrid work, whether you are a leader leading a team or you're an individual trying to figure this thing out, I just want to highlight the fact that belief does become behavior. When everybody else is saying that it's impossible to run a sub 4-minute mile, are you going to believe it's possible? When everybody is saying that you can't do that, you have to do this, you have to respond by this way, you have to lead people a certain way, are you going to believe that, or are you going to believe something differently? I was actually doing a kind of a series of talks this week in Chicago with a friend of mine, Kevin Miller. He's been on the show before, but we were doing a presentation called A Brand of Resilience. And we were talking about resilience from the perspective of people and culture and brand and marketing, and how the two intersect to create resilience within organizations, within brands, and within people. And I think one of the things that just struck me was what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the environment that we're in, ultimately does create resilience in each one of us. And so in this environment of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, I just want to go back to that initial question that I asked you. What are you believing? And then I want to challenge you. I hope that this show is not just something you consume, but it's something that you go and do something with, because I'm believing that if you just take the time to process, you might get to some deep core beliefs that you have that you need to change. And I love the fact that our brain can change. This is the study of neuroplasticity and the fact that you can actually rewire some of those beliefs in your own mind. And I just want to encourage you in this season, with a lot going on all around us, what are you believing? What are you believing about your work? What are you believing about your team? What are you believing about that individual on your team who isn't performing up to standard right now? Have you created clarity? What do you believe about them and their abilities? Because those beliefs become behaviors. Those beliefs become how you treat that individual. Those beliefs become how you interact with people. Those beliefs become how you lead meetings and what you expect from certain people. And I just want to challenge you today. What are you believing? And how are those beliefs becoming behaviors? All right, I'm going to wrap this show up early because I want to give you a few extra minutes in our normal allotted time that you would just take a few seconds to process a few of those beliefs. I heard someone else in the last week talk about the emotions and how we feel, and what we focus on becomes really what we do. And so as we think about beliefs and what you're focused on and those feelings and emotions, which ultimately become behavior, I would love for you to just spend a few moments to think about your own health, your own wellness, mental wellness, because that's really where these beliefs come from. What are you believing about yourself? What are you believing about the world around you? I hope that you'll take just a few seconds to process that. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Always About People show. Again, I hope that this topic, beliefs become behaviors, might just get you thinking this week. Thanks for joining us again. For those of you who join us every week, live on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, we hope that you'll like, subscribe, sign up for notifications so that you get every episode. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you then.